I'm here in the greater Salt Lake City area. Actually, I'm in Bluffdale at the moment, and I have a little bit of a sage offering that I'm making. I am making my first site visit here in the greater Salt Lake area. I have a talk tonight to talk about digital slavery, and I wanted to kick it off actually by coming here to the largest data collection center by the NSA, and we're out here next to Camp Williams. I'm going to set down my sage. I went ahead and lit it early on so that you guys didn't have to watch me fumbling with my lighter. But we're here on the highway. You can see there's like a helicopter thing over there, and a lookout house. This is about as close as you can get. There's sort of a danger warning sign over in that spot, and I don't know, maybe can't get any closer than this, but this is just off of Route 68, Camp Williams, and we're I think it's important to come here because we spent $1.5 billion on a series of data center warehouses, and this is the U.S. government. It was exposed later through the Project Prism that the U.S. government was collecting digital communications on U.S. citizens. And this data center here is under the jurisdiction of the National Intelligence Community. Avril Haines was just appointed the head of National Intelligence. And we paid a visit down to the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab earlier this summer, and she was at Event 201, and she was a fellow with this Applied Physics Lab, so looking at social physics and using data analytics as signals intelligence. I'm sorry this is so loud, but I think it's really important for us to see the physical infrastructure. And again, I'm going to pivot it around. Got some sagebrush here and thistle. This center was built between 2014 and 2019. It costs $1.5 billion, and it's meant to hold up to 100 years of digital dust on whomever, right? And so, I'm not going to cross the signs here, but this is what we paid for. These are these data centers. They live in a physical space. They're living here in Bluffdale, Utah. And nobody really knows exactly what these data centers are for besides general storage for the intelligence community. And the more and more I understand about digital twinning, the more I start to think like maybe this data is being collected for other purposes than intelligence. Maybe this is a giant center for data collection for the digital twinning project. And technically they're not supposed to access this data unless you have like a FISA warrant. But I don't know that it's to say you couldn't create a digitally twin society on that data if it wasn't for the purposes of intelligence. I mean, maybe that's what this data is about. It's less about intelligence, or maybe intelligence is a part of it, but the other part is the data aggregation. And it really hit me the other night because I was thinking about blockchain and the fact that MIT has this Enigma program that can query on encrypted data, and just how it all fits together. Because I'm going to be giving my talk tonight. It's going to be in It's going to be just in Silicon Slopes, which is their burgeoning tech sector. It's not far from here. And one of the buildings there is actually Ancestry.com. And we know that Ancestry has been bought by Blackstone, and Blackstone is operating in the impact investment space and the genomic space. So I'm kind of in this weird space in Greater Salt Lake City where we're looking at data analytics, biotech. The state of Utah has 1,000 companies that are in life sciences, and we have the intelligence community, we have these data centers, and there's a whole lot going on. So I'm grateful for the invitation to come out here and talk, and for my hosts who are being a good spirits at letting me sort of wander around and take pictures of things. A lot of things, again, like people are not aware of that they even exist. people who are local that this is going on, because literally if you were driving down this highway, and I always, when I heard of Bluffdale, I was like, well, this must be in some far away corner of remote area, and it's absolutely not. It's like right in the greater Salt Lake area, right off the highway. But if you didn't know, you would just think that this was like, I don't know, like an Amazon or a Walmart distribution center or something. It's kind of tucked away in these hills, and you wouldn't know. So anyway, I got to get ready for my talk, but I'm just launching it off with Bluffdale. It seems appropriate. I went on a nice little walk with my hosts and their family and dogs in a canyon this morning in the snow. It's snowing here, and I set an intention and left a stone, a beautiful round stone from Cheyenne River Reservation, actually Standing Rock, I think it was, that I had gotten at a lake, and set an intention there and just be grounded on the land, because what we're going up against is this virtualized world. So anyway, just, I'll take a closer with the sage, and again, to do the mantra, we do not consent. Bluffdale Data Center, we do not consent. Mothers of the world, grandmothers of the world, citizens of the world and the cosmos, and on behalf of all of the beings, we do not consent to this diabolical program. You never ask us, you're spending all our money on it, where we really actually need housing for people, and we need food for people, and we need real education for our children, and we need to take care of our planet. And instead you're virtualizing us and sticking us in a windowless, smoky, awful building center over there. And I will say, I'll share the link to this later, but there's an image I'm using in my thing tonight. If you should look at Bluffdale, Utah Data Center on Google Maps and look at the terrain view, the satellite view, because it looks like a cell or a paramecium. It's actually this weird oval shape with these things in it. It looks like a cell diagram. So check it out. It was designed this way, I think, for a certain reason, and we're not going to be your genetically engineered machines, and we're not going to be your cyborgs, and we refuse, and we're saying no, and we're going to fight you all the way down. So signing off for now. Be well, friends. Thanks for checking in, and hopefully I'll have some more updates later. Bye-bye. All right, I couldn't help myself. I'm going to knit together all of these little site visits, but we came across, now we're up at Silicon Slopes in Lehigh, sorry. And all of this whole area has been built up within the past 5 years. So that pretty much corresponds with the time in which the Bluffdale Data Center went in. So it's not that far. And this entire area has all been built up from nothing, just empty area. And so there's a number of different sort of mini tech companies. There's a WeWork, which is over in the distance. And then this one, I couldn't help myself, because here we have Oracle, right? So for those of you who may have listened to the talk that I did with Jason earlier this week about Salesforce and the data dashboards, I got into an article that I revisited. It's from the New York Times, and essentially it was about digital surveillance and databases and interoperable databases, and that Oracle started in 1979, and Larry Ellison, what he brought in terms of innovation was the idea of the interoperable database, which, as we know, is what impact investing runs on. It's sort of the predictive profiling and the threat scoring. So, Ellison had developed that company. His first client was with the CIA. Most of their business is federal business, and a lot of it is around intelligence and database systems. And they got a big boost after 9/11, because all of the security, interoperable data, predictive profiling systems that they were advancing suddenly became very relevant. So I want to be here again to tell Oracle and Larry Ellison that we do not consent to be data on their dashboards, and that we do not consent to that program of social impact investing tied to the national security state that is underlying all of this. And it's important to note in that article, which was written in 2002 in the New York Times, that they specifically mentioned that there would be one Uber database to rule them all, and that it would likely be Oracle that would be doing that, and that they would track everything. And so that's Larry Ellison talking in 2002. And he said, really, we shouldn't be worried at all about the government and data overreach because it's never going to be a problem. It's nothing, anything anybody should be concerned about, misuse of data. And that since the credit card companies were already all doing it, the government might as well. And Oracle was going to be the one to coordinate all of that. So, you know, in the Silicon Slopes area, for some reason, the live feature went off of my Facebook page after I was at Bluffdale, and I thought maybe it had been eliminated, but it just got hidden in a submenu. So I did another video actually at Ancestry.com, which is just up the hill. It's the international headquarters of Ancestry.com, and as we know, there's the DNA portion of Ancestry.com now that is being tied into criminal investigations and other uses of that genomic material. And it was bought by Blackstone last summer. That's Stephen Schwartzman, who is leading Blackstone and being the largest single private rental housing owner in the country and is putting hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into artificial intelligence research. So, you know, we're in this area and, you know, we're looking around and it's all like brand new again. There's little hotels to serve the business people and fast casual dining and, you know, all sorts of like the banality of evil, but no one realizes what it is going to ultimately mean to live on a data dashboard. So I think this is my last little live before the talk tonight. I think it's going to be live broadcast through Big Ocean Women if they can get the YouTube channel thing to work. So if assuming they're able to get that set up, I'll share that link as well. So be well, everyone. Okay, so I've got my sage, and we are here. I'm here at the international headquarters of Ancestry.com. Ancestry.com. So it's here snowing, and I don't want to get my phone too messed up, but we are here, and also my lighter is not working all that great. So I think I might just sort of walk up to this sign. For you guys, you know, I had a nice conversation with a friend today after listening to one of my talks, and he was saying that, you know, this is the time for us to decide what kind of ancestors we want to be, because they're going to ask us to build a virtual jail, not just for ourselves, but for all future generations. And so are we going to be those ancestors that our legacy is a legacy of a digital jail and cyborg transhumanism? And I would say most of us would not consent to that. It's also important to understand that Ancestry has been using some of their DNA material in connection with criminal investigations, and that this the company was just bought this summer by Blackstone, which is the world's largest private housing owner, or at least in the United States for sure. And so they're also doing an impact investing platform. And so my question is, like, of Ancestry is, you know, are there going to be genomics that are starting to be attached because Blackstone's doing impact investing and Stephen Schwartzman is investing heavily in AI. So here we have, again, you know, Ancestry. It's here in the basin. We are just about a 10-minute drive from Bluffdale. We know that they're collecting DNA data, that they're connected to criminal investigations, that they're now connected to Blackstone that manages housing and impact investing. And again, I'm just going to do another small ritual of non-consent here with a bit of my sage, and I'm going to just place it at the base of the headquarters sign saying that here we go. That this is sage from my garden in that I tried to help make in South Dakota on Cheyenne River Reservation. So it's Lakota, and we know what the issues are with Indigenous people and the mining of, you know, bioprospecting of Indigenous people for profit and also as a social control mechanism. And, you know, we refuse that. We refuse that past. I mean, we don't refuse it. We acknowledge that past, and we refuse this future that is planned. So it's important for us to know that genomics, family history is a key part of risk profiling, and that it's not just some small genealogical venture. There's two very large buildings here. So anyway, that's it for today, folks. Okay, so we're next day of field work out in, now we're in Draper, Utah, and we're paying a little bit of a visit to the headquarters of Evernim. I'll give you a little bit of a look have my little sage here with me. We are sort of, again, it's one of these just suburban, low rise, brand new office park kind of setups. And this is the headquarters of, well, I guess the offices of Evernim, although it's kind of inscrutable. They must just have an office in this space because the owner of the building is called Jeunesse or something like that. It's some aging products, health services for the old people. I don't know, creams or vitamins or something like that. But we do have confirmation that they're in this building. And Evernim is the organization that's doing the development of the blockchain identity systems. They were working on the system with the state of Illinois, the pilot to do blockchain birth certificates. So again, the concern with the digital identity systems is that essentially that turns individuals into data commodities. And so under the premise that you own and manage your data and you have all of this ease and access and, ostensible privacy, that you become essentially virtualized as your data, and your relationship to public services and other things are through your data, through the government. And it's part of the impact investing space. And, as I mentioned in my talk last night, the problem with this is that ultimately, if we agree to live as digital identity beings, even if it's private, is that we will become impact commodities, because MIT has developed the Enigma protocol that allows for querying on encrypted data. So there's nothing that would stop telemedicine, educational technology, teletherapy, sort of smart access to digital vouchers for benefits, and measuring social impact for impact investors through a digital identity. They may not know you individually, but in aggregate, a group of people receiving access to services would be able to be queried for impact for these investors. But in order for that to happen, in order for the social impact space to really scale, it's all based on cost offsets. And so they need interoperable data analytics. They need all of that data interoperable, starting prenatally, preferably, or at the very least from birth. So they have so many different pilots that are going out with blockchain systems. But again, Evernim is sort of a pioneer in this self-sovereign identity space. And it's useful to me to come and just see what these places look like. Again, Evernim, many of these companies have their own buildings with their own names and logos on the outside. You can sort of see this, there's like Regis, and there's another one with a bird. Like, they're very prominently displayed. And we were confused because we got to this space and we thought that, we were trying to identify, who was in this building, and there's nothing anywhere here that says Evernim. It's very low key, and Jeunesse is the only name on the building, although we do have, online confirmation from a blockchain meetup that shows this. It says it's in the Jeunesse building, that this is what's going on. So again, I'm just trying to put a face on what these systems look like. They're maybe I'll just sort of walk around the front end of things. It's very banal, it's just, here we have these beautiful mountains. We had a big snow yesterday up in the mountains, so the mountains are beautiful. So we were in this valley, but there's just a gas station here. It's unclear whether the people, I bought a lighter so that I would have better options, like with my sage today. So I got a lighter, and I'm like, these, most people would have no idea that Digital Identity Central is right next door. But this is, clearly a high-end space, new construction. Almost everything in this valley area, this technology greater Silicon Slopes area, you can look and it's all under 10 years old. I mean, it's all brand new. It's just landscape, parking lots. You can see Jeunesse is there. And I mean, this is it. And, it's clean. It looks nice and tidy. And, just like an office park and these are places everybody, people go to work, and, it is what it is. But, we have to really, I do strongly feel that what's coming is this issue of, are we going to blockchain people? Are we going to turn Are we going down a technology road where our real world is virtualized and we live as data and we're profiled as data, and we can be private with our data, we can be a data brand, and these are the companies that are doing that. And then can you consent? So in the Illinois program, it was birth certificates. Well, certainly a baby, an infant newborn, cannot consent to be put on blockchain. Just can't. So again, I'll just do my little, we do not consent to the program. I'm not sure exactly how to hit something here, but how to get it back. But we're not consenting. Evernim, I've got my sage. I'm gonna just sprinkle it here by the building, and thanks for you guys who are watching today. We don't consent. Mothers of the earth do not consent to have children blockchained. Be well, everyone. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. So we're downtown Salt Lake City. Get a little bit of a view. Around here, we're actually at 222 South Main Street, I think. And this is we have brought our bit of a sage offering to the headquarters of Goldman Sachs here in Utah, and just wanting to again continue this program of impact investing. Goldman Sachs, they're not on the door anywhere, but there's 2 offices, actually 3 in the greater Salt Lake City area, 2 downtown. One is at 222 South Main, which is an interesting number if anybody has thoughts about that number. The other one is 111 South Main Street. And I believe that this is part of the industrial banking division of Goldman Sachs. There's a 3rd office in Draper, Utah. And there are not a lot of other branches. There's like the New York branch, the Jersey City branch, there's a Texas branch, there's a Boston branch, I think. But there's not a lot of branches. So the fact that Salt Lake City has 3 distinct presences of Goldman Sachs is interesting. I gave a presentation last night, and Salt Lake City had the first pre-K social impact bond. And so that was significant because that is sort of leading to the surveillance play tables and probably likely the push for digital identity for toddlers. And again, we were just at Evernim, which is was doing the pilot blockchain identity for the state of Illinois. And so the fact that Goldman Sachs, they relocated and they set up their office here in 2004. And, I'm sure they probably, had, a less expensive labor force. I know they hired a lot of kids out of BYU. They're, essentially Goldman Sachs, Ian Galloway of the San Francisco Federal Reserve, at a presentation of Ready Nation about impact investing in early childhood said, essentially that Goldman Sachs is making this market out of thin air. That almost all of the social impact bonds have a Goldman Sachs presence. And so it's really significant just to be here and again state that we're not consenting to the human capital bond agenda, to the social impact bond agenda, to blockchaining our children to Goldman Sachs. We know that these hedge fund, these gambling games are not for the good of humanity, and we're refusing. So I have a bit of sage here that I'm gonna put at the base of this statue with our non-consent, a little tobacco offering, and I think we're gonna walk down to 111 shortly just to see what's going on down there. It's another block. But, for the most part, I think many people are not familiar with industrial banking systems, but I do think that they're going to be central to the social impact human capital bond program. We parked about a block away and we're walking through, there's a lot of banking interests around here: Chase, Citigroup, Alta Bank, US Bank, other financial interests. But there was like a co-working space called the Impact Hub. So, definitely the impact stuff. We're hoping to go over to the University of Utah, the David Eckles School, with the Sorensen Impact Center there next. So again, it doesn't look super, a lot like there's a lot going on here. It's just, a glass building, right? Like I keep saying, the banality of evil. It's just, a regular office building. You know, they've got the bike share bikes and everything going around. So, you know, that's about it for now. But thanks for joining in. Maybe I'll do a quick video up at 111, see if there's any difference there. But, you know, we'll hopefully knit this all together into a video for a blog when I get back. Okay, so we just walked up the block. Now we're at the other Goldman Sachs office. So this is 111 Main Street again. It doesn't say Goldman Sachs, but based on their address online and their Bloomberg profile, this is one of their offices, the Industrial Bank. And, you know, it's interesting because if you look in the lobby in here, you'll see there's a giant screen with this amazing sort of landscape. It's maybe kind of hard to tell, but look, see, the landscape is changing. And I would say the screen is about 15 feet high by 30 feet wide. It's pretty impressive. And if you watch the screen, it's mostly sort of this beautiful landscape of the Salt Lake City area and of Utah, and it's telling you to visit. But you know, it's all I can think of when I see that is that what happens when we're all stuck inside and doing our human capital pathways programs, and we're not actually ever allowed to go out in nature again. That this is this virtualized, sort of hyper-realized version of nature. So, there's a trolley going by, so it's kind of loud. So I'll just say, you know, in Utah and in Salt Lake City, a major force in sort of policy, setting policy, and politicians, many individuals are connected with the Church of Latter-day Saints, and the church has pretty immense holdings, investment holdings, including real estate holdings. And so it is my understanding that this particular building that Goldman Sachs is occupying is part of that overall portfolio of the LDS Church. So, you know, it's all knit together, all of these things. You know, I will just do sort of a quick view. This is a smart city. It's ostensibly a gigabit smart city. And, you know, we're seeing those stupid scooters and, you know, smart bikes that we've got around. But I have to say there's very little small cell installation, 5G installation for a gigabit city. So I'm not sure how that is all working out, because in Philadelphia, I mean, we are lousy with 5G technology and the small cells, you know, multiple cells per block, not just the big towers, but the cylindrical and the rectangular cell-based infrastructure. So I'm not seeing this here. Our next stop is we're going to swing over to the University of Utah, which is the home of one of the first 4 nodes of the ARPANET. So we're going to check that out. And also James Sorensen has endowed a social impact R&D center at the David Eckles School of Business over there. So those are going to be the next 2 pieces. But again, wanting to make sure that we hit Goldman Sachs and talked a little bit about the fact that their hands are over almost all of the social impact bonds, and that the first pre-K social impact bond was coming with the backing of Salt Lake City. I think it was the Granite School District. And I believe that it was wrapped around in this idea of wraparound services and community school services is going to be where this is going. So definitely something to keep an eye on as the new Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, comes on board. And we know that there's immense need for families after sort of all of this broader economic dispossession. But then, is that going to be a way to harm, again, those communities by turning them into impact commodities, or is there going to be another course? So, bye. All right, so we made it up to the University of Utah, and there's a couple stops here. Some of it is about technology, but this first stop is the David Eckles Business School. This is in particular the James Lee Sorensen Global Impact Investing Center. You can kind of see it up there. It's the University of Utah. So the reason why this is important is that, as you know, there's a lot of impact investing programs here in the state of Utah, social impact finance. James Sorensen is a key figure. His family was involved in real estate, and then he made his money, I believe, in like media communications for the deaf. creating video conferencing, and moved on to including some sort of life sciences initiatives, and also genomics tied to like ancestry types of things. So they have their hands in a lot of pots. He was a major supporter of advancing the Social Impact Partnerships Pay for Results Act, which was the seed money to get this all started. He hosts the Impact Center hosts a winter summit on impact investing. And last night I talked about watching one of the videos from the Impact Summit in 2018 that I believe probably must have been here on the campus, that was talking about, essentially it was youth incarceration and social impact bonds. But at the end of the presentation, the panelists, including Ian Galloway of the San Francisco Federal Reserve, who's a major player in this space, someone asked, who was with a Utah, Salt Lake City area food pantry, the fact that all of their impact opportunities were not going to work if people were hungry, and that they could never seem to figure out a way to put food access into the social impact bond space. At which point Ian Galloway essentially said, well, we can't, these deals only work if you can find the cost offset, and we haven't figured out the cost offset for hunger yet. And hunger is Sustainable Development Goal 2, that maybe he sort of speculated that maybe it could be test scores, that like children's third grade test scores would be the cost offset, improved test scores to feed children. And so, one of the things I was trying to come across last night is that, people of faith in this particular area, many of whom are very active in charitable giving, need to understand that these impact markets aren't actually about permanently solving the problem. It's about shaping people's trauma in ways through innovative financial instruments to actually profit off of the trauma, but at the same time, they're making money and they're being perceived of as being benevolent. And I don't think that that's benevolent. If it was truly benevolent, you wouldn't have children go hungry and pay for them only based on their test scores. So, again, I just want to, school, it's a Saturday, so there's really not many folks here, but, I've got a bit of sage again here, and I'm just going to leave it as an offering to say that, again, we don't consent, Jim Sorensen. We don't consent to Social Impact Partnerships Pay for Results Act. We don't consent to pre-K social impact bonds. We're refusing this program of poverty mining. And next on, we're going to go over to the computing center, which is where they've the ARPA nodes. I'm going to try to find the older computer building. Salt Lake City was one of the first 4 nodes of the internet, the ARPANET at that time. And so I want to find that building. And then also someone was just telling me that there was a new antenna, something called PAWR, some innovative, it's a major research hub, and probably a lot of sort of defense, military, electrical engineering research going on here. So, we're, going to go on to that. Again, it's this lovely setting in this, let me flip it around, this beautiful valley, snowy mountains, and all sorts of stuff. But there's a lot of complicated things going on here, and just showing up and trying to be a conscience. All right, so we made our second stop here at the University of Utah campus in Salt Lake City. We are at the Joseph Merrill Engineering Building. Again, I've brought my sage for cleansing. As we're sort of facing off against the virtualized world, it's important to sort of know the history, and this history is that this building, the program, the computing program here at the University of Utah was started in I think 1965, and it became the home of the ARPANET. And this building actually has evidently Utah's only nuclear reactor is under this building, and it is used not for energy but for scientific experimentation. And so this idea of the internet, what was especially worked on here at the Merrill building, my understanding from reading up a little bit about it, was that it was known particularly for computer graphics and visualization. And so that one of the earliest computer graphics that was created, someone drew a teapot and sort of a pencil sketch of a teapot, and then rendered that mathematically and created sort of a visual, a computer coded visual. And if you Joseph, this is for you. I keep imagining all of your objects in your video game that you're developing for Technocracy, and all of your collections of objects that you have holding there, and that the whole precedent for those objects started here at the University of Utah, and the graphics visualization programs of transforming real three-dimensional objects into mathematical equations that then fit into virtual spaces. And so that history has continued, and my understanding is that the University of Utah computing program is very much involved in sort of sophisticated graphics around virtual reality as well. So we can see where that is all going in terms of the social impact space in this idea of measurable behavior change and inserting people into virtual world and managing them through sort of behaviorist conditioning and coding conditioning in those worlds. So, I think it's just important to, again, show this just big open parking lot. We've got the mountains in the distance, snowy mountains. They're doing some construction here. Again, the building itself, it looks well kept. It's an older building. It dates to the 60s, but obviously they've been putting some money into it. And I think I'm just going to walk down with my sage and put it at the base of this building. It's interesting to see how the history comes together, and that it's not really history. It's not even really past. It just keeps repeating. And, we're built on this legacy of the past and sort of the decisions that we make, to act or to not act, and to face or to not face these things. It matters. And again, this may seem like very small gestures just to come here and sort of, again, state our revocation of consent of being part of a virtual reality world, revoking consent to be captured, as an equation, as a predictive profile, that is not something that is our destiny. We're spiritual beings, we're electrical beings, but we're not meant to fit into computer equations. So, again, we're just saying, University of Utah, computer, internet, ARPANET, this history, we acknowledge the history, and we maybe have realized that there have been some missteps made in terms of the idea of remaking the world as a mathematical equation and as a virtual simulation. That's not something that we're going to be about. So I'm just gonna leave my sage offering here to the creator of real life, sacred life that is not simply energy to be contained, like in managed like in the nuclear reactors for experimentation purposes. A lot of this stuff is military contracting purposes. The internet and the ARPANET are fundamentally militarized technology. And I have to say, being from Philadelphia, being from a place that, we're a land of two rivers, we're pretty flat, we've got a lot of sort of just green trees, but we don't have anywhere near these amazing mountains. And it's really just struck me being here in Salt Lake, the proximity of these like amazing mountain beings, looking out and sort of with all of their age, with what in the world are people doing here, and what are we doing to the world? So we'll see. We might have another visit here, or I may be just signing off until tomorrow. Again, I have to talk tonight. Hopefully it will go off without a hitch. But I thank you for listening. Good morning, folks. This is Allison. I'm another day of doing sort of field visits here in the Salt Lake City area. I don't know if you can see the clouds behind me. It looks like there's a lot of geoengineering going on here. I'm let me see, I'll just go up in the sky. You can see sort of the cross pieces. I was driving in from Pleasant Valley today, and seeing a lot of stuff in the sky. I'm here, I've got my sage going. Jason, thank you very much for giving me a nice lighter, so that would work out. I'm here at the corporate offices of Instructure, and this is off of 215, the base of the mountains. You can kind of see the mountains again around here. A lot of spring stuff in the sky. You can see the plane off in the distance, maybe doing some of that. So I'm here at Instructure. Let me make sure my car is locked up. And the thing about Instructure that is important to know, just a second, I don't want to get hit by the FedEx truck. So they're a learning management system company. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the idea of a learning management system, increasingly as educational options are put online, resources and communication are carried out through like online learning, this platform. And there's a number, I think Blackboard was an early one. Instructure was founded in 2008 by two graduates of Brigham Young University. And then I believe in 2010, the Utah education system replaced Blackboard that they had been using as their learning management system for state education processes. They switched over to Instructure. And Instructure, one of their flagship products is called Canvas. And so Canvas, you would put, if a professor or, it's down into K-12, a teacher had resources, readings, tests, quizzes, even online communication, it all gets logged in through Canvas. And the thing about Canvas is there's a lot of metadata collected. Here, I'm going to flip around and just show you the area that I'm in. So again, it's one of these corporate campuses. You can see Instructure right there with, I need to probably look up master control, what master control is, that's interesting. So Canvas collects metadata, so they know there's a unique identifier that goes along with it. And I read an article in UBC, which is the student paper for the University of British Columbia, and it was done a couple years ago, and someone who was in their graduate journalism program was looking into Instructure and Canvas specifically, and what data was being collected on students in Canvas. And he submitted an open records request to get that data. And that was kind of hard to get but the university finally gave it to him. And he said when he got it, there were about 400 million individual data points on him in the system. And I don't think he'd been using it very long because he was only a master's student. So that's like a 2-year program. So there are 400 million data points already on him as he used this system. And so right now, this system is being used in K-12 schools. It's being used in MOOCs, which are massively open online courses. And I think they're up to, in 2013, there were 9 million users of the Canvas platform, which is a lot. And that was 2013. So in 7 years, you can imagine how many more users there are. And so there's a question of this data mining and the data analytics that are going on with these online learning systems, and who is accessing data, how is it being used, are students, essentially this article from the student at University of British Columbia was saying they even had data down to how this person used their keyboard. They would know when they would open a reading, how long they spent on the reading. But of course it could be gamed because you could just leave the browser open for hours and it would look like you read for hours, or you could download a PDF and it might look like you didn't use it at all. So it's inaccurate, even the data that is being collected. So again, this is all very concerning. There was an individual who came to my talk on Friday who was an area university professor who said that this person recommended they don't use Canvas with their students. They recommend the students do not communicate with them through Canvas, and they were trying to stay out of it altogether. But this was also at Brigham Young, which is, you can see that there would be a vested interest in them using this program since the graduates are BYU graduates. And then I also met someone this weekend who is working on digital identity systems with Evernim for BYU. So you can see how it's all sort of starting to interconnect, and Instructure has actually bought several related companies tied to competency-based education, mastery-based education. The Canvas program is integrated with something called Credly, so that's digital badging systems, Mastery Connect, and Portfolium, which are ways of aggregating data information as online portfolios of performance standards and data analytics tied to badging. And so we can see how it's all, Portfolium is based in San Diego, how these systems of data are connecting in with the human capital investment schema. So, this is Instructure. Again, it's just like in, one of these suburban centers. This is like Old Mill Corporate Center. It's just these corporate office parks. It could just be, most anywhere affluent suburb. But it's here in Utah. And I think that's significant. Again, we're in this valley with a huge number of data centers. Someone's told me recently after I was giving a talk that now there are data centers that are much larger even than the one at Bluffdale, the NSA data center, and that they had heard that the intelligence community was actually outsourcing stuff to Google. And so there's a giant Google data center here, and there's a giant Facebook data center here. So that's about it. That's what I've got for Instructure. I would encourage people to look it up. Again, it's really, I have to say, it's really weird. I'm just gonna look at the skies here. There's a lot going on with the skies that are, these stripy skies, and I don't know if this geoengineering stuff going on, but I'm going to move on. I'm going to be going up to Powder Mountain. And again, many of the investors in ed tech are the same people who are investing, putting their venture capital into these online learning systems. So it's good to understand badging, understand data analytics, understand data surveillance, metadata, microdata. It's all about lifelong learning, but it's the we can track it kind of lifelong learning. So bye, everybody. Okay, so I'm now up on Powder Mountain. It took me about an hour and a half to drive up from Instructure. I'm just going to show you the vistas here. So we're on the top. So Powder Mountain used to be sort of a municipal ski resort, and it served the community outside of Ogden, Utah, the larger area. And in 2013, a group of venture capitalists, including Greg Morrow, who were connected with a gathering called Summit. So Summit was sort of a networking opportunity for sort of connected tech folks. And see, there's some various snow activities going on here. So they were connected with Summit. Summit was sort of like this gathering of TED Talk, Burning Man sort of gathering. You had to be vetted to attend, and I think it was like a weekend of talks, and it was like it would run between $3,000 and $8,000 a person to go to these gatherings. And I think that was started in maybe 2008-ish, and over time they created sort of this big networking center of sort of tech elite folks. They would, gather on cruise ships, sort of booze cruises, and do these talks and build this network largely of sort of tech Northern California folks. And then they got wind that this the top of this mountain was for sale, the ski resort. I guess now they've bought additional land, so it's one of the largest, I'm just going to show it again, one of the largest ski areas in the United States, I think. I'm not a skier, but I read somewhere that was the case. It's about 81,000 acres. You can look it up online, but there's lots and lots of different ski runs here and various snowboarding and other snow activities. So they bought this mountain, and essentially they're trying to sort of remake it as an intentional community for pretty much social impact entrepreneurs and a lot of tech people. And it's very expensive to live up here. Ostensibly, the houses that are going to be built are supposed to be small and fit in with the landscape, but it's supposed to be a social networking area specifically for the tech community in this sort of new social entrepreneur space of sort of tech progressivism. And it's interesting because, again, I'll just show I don't know if you guys can, if it'll zoom in. I'm not much of a skier, so I don't spend a lot of time up in the mountains, but, I had this little rental car, and it was kind of a little intense getting up the last 7 miles of this mountain. I'm like, is this car going to make it? It's really steep, and it's sort of at the curve of these two different canyons. So it's away, and I would say if you wanted to have some sort of secure location for, I don't know, whatever comes, that this is a very out of the way spot, and it's very hard to get to, and it's very steep. It could be sort of cut off and secured pretty readily. I will also show, here, let me see, I don't know if you guys can see, in driving up from Salt Lake, the amount of geoengineering out here is really crazy. And I don't know, maybe everybody else has seen stuff like this before, but I'm not used to being out in the western skies. In Philadelphia, we do not have these sorts of skies up and about, but there's this incredible haze. And my hosts yesterday were saying how great it was that we went out to Antelope Island, that the skies were so clear, because usually they're just really, really hazy. And they talked about there being inversions, that the inversions kept the smog in. But now I sort of wonder if that was a Sunday and maybe the planes were not out. But today, like the whole sky is covered in these sort of thin, sort of spread out spring clouds. And I've seen a lot of specific trails coming off of the plains as well. So, there's not a whole lot up here. I'm not going to walk around a ton. There's like a lodge. I'm not going to go over there because I probably will have to have a mask or something. It's not super deluxe at this point. I mean, the lodge itself looks like it probably was from the municipal, the days when it was a municipal ski resort, like just sort of a basic public access ski resort. I mean, I think anyone can come here now, but it was sort of more of just a basic budget place where people could come, regular folks, to come and ski. But knowing that many of the tech investors, including Greg Morrow, are tied up with the ed tech space, Greg Morrow was connected with Learn Capital, and one of the key advisors for Learn Capital was Tom Vander Ark, who was the U.S. contact, former Gates Foundation, the U.S. contact for Global Education Futures, which was advancing all sorts of scary things like people nairs and student genetic passports and that sort of thing. And then I just came from Instructure and the data analytics. I really wanted to come up and see what it was about up here, because I think at some point it's going to be important that people know, like, the landscape on which all of this is built. So it's built on, I'm going to try to maybe head back down into Salt Lake City in a bit and see a few more things down there, but it's both this great basin, with a lot of, money. There's a lot of money here. A lot of it is being channeled through the LDS Church and their investments. And there's a huge number of data centers here, data analytics, and then the Silicon Slopes. And then this is sort of the resort bookend on the northern end of this basin. And again, one of the people who gave me a lot of tools to sort of see all the stuff that's going on with impact investing, spent time here. So I did want to just come up and see what it was all about. So it's pretty cold, and I'm definitely not skiing. And there's not really like walking trails or anything. So I think I'm just going to grab a picnic lunch and head back into Salt Lake City. But thanks for hanging with me on this continued tour of the greater Salt Lake region, and hopefully maybe check in a couple more spots later. All right, so I'm making my way back into Salt Lake City. It's interesting. I was driving off of Powder Mountain, and there's sort of this windy road through a little river valley that sort of cuts through the mountain pass. If you can kind of see the mountains here, and just as I was coming down off the mountain, sort of out of the area of, there's a lake reservoir, sort of a narrow bridge, and I turned right, and then the next building is this very quaint, cozy little sort of log cabin type of building, and I'm like, that's really cute. And then I see the sign, and the sign says Northrop Grumman Conference Center. So that was kind of interesting. I just want to make a mental note for myself to look up the Northrop Grumman's presence in the Salt Lake City area. But coming out, so I'm driving out through Ogden, which is north of Salt Lake City. And, I just wanted to take this opportunity. There's this beautiful high school that I drove by, Art Deco. It's actually in really nice condition, which is unusual. I'm used to being in Philly. Our old high schools are in wretched condition. But I just felt I had to pull over because something I've noticed, like in my stay in Salt Lake City and the greater area, is that there are increasingly numbers of these new 5G towers on public parkland and in schools. So these appear to be really new receivers, and this is the football field of the high school here. And let me see if I can zoom back out. There's two big towers at the end of the football field, and I can't imagine what they would need to need two. The high school is here. Here's Tower 1. In the distance is Tower 2, and then the high school football field is right in between the two towers. And I just want to point that out because I know a lot of us have been concerned about the rollout of 5G technology in the schools during the lockdown process. And again, I have seen the installation of these towers on school property, and I don't know if it's because it's public and so it's easier to get permissions to put these things on, but it's quite amazing. I'm actually gonna walk over there. Let me lock up my car just to look at the cabling. I just want to look at this cabling. It's quite crazy. But they're in parks and schools, and we know that the experts are refusing to talk about the impact of the environmental impacts on human bodies of these technologies. The 5G and ultimately 6G will be central to the Internet of Bodies program. So I just want to sort of show you what this is like. It's kind of crazy. I don't know if this panel has come off of it, but oh look, Crown Castle. So we know that Bill Gates is a major investor in Crown Castle as well. And then there's all these cables going up to the top of the tower there. And then there's one on the other side of the football field. And, this is Ogden High School football field. So, I just wanted to sort of pull over and take this opportunity to say that we have a lot of questions about these technologies. One, about turning children into the Internet of Bodies, this future transhumanist program, and two, what the short-term impacts are going to be on kids from, whatever EMF radiation is coming off of these things. It's just crazy to me that you would have two of these towers literally within like 200 feet of each other, sandwiching this high school, which seems to be probably like one of the bigger high schools in the area. So I just wanted to take this moment to document this, because it's not the first time I've seen it while I've been here. And I know we're concerned about, look, oh my gosh, the 5G in the schools, there's 5G around the schools. There's the question of, what are we doing with children and this Internet of Bodies program? Is that what the next generation is being meant to do? And and what is the role of public education, the complicity of school boards in allowing this to happen? Because it's really horrific. I mean, if we understand biocapitalism, that these things are about the rollout of turning people's behaviors, turning their social relations into data for investors, for military surveillance, for signals intelligence. I mean, I'm probably maybe a little more sensitive to this because I've been driving around all morning listening to Shoshana Zuboff's on the audiobook Surveillance Capitalism. Even though she's not my favorite, I'm still listening to her. So again, I just want to do a sort of quick overview, the high school, these 5G towers, and just to get it documented, because it's important. And this is not the only place it's happening. It's happening all over the world right now, all over our country. And the kids are really the targets. I mean, all of us are targets, but especially they're interested in capturing, this next generation. So capturing the educational process, and that's what Instructure is about, my morning visit. And then again, the educational technologists, venture capitalists, most of whom are from Northern California, who have bought Powder Mountain, that community up there. It's all integrated. So just signing off. Okay, so I thought I was going to have one more stop at the United Way, but before then I took a short visit to this is the Church of the Magdalene, Mary Magdalene. It's the center of the Utah Archdiocese of the Catholic Church, and is evidently the only cathedral in the country that is dedicated to Mary Magdalene. So interesting fact. So right across the street, here you go, we've got the Catholic Diocese of Salt Lake City. Not surprisingly that it's right across, from the cathedral, which was beautiful, by the way. I'm saying this because, people might have seen one of my other videos about the St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia. We know that the Vatican is very much involved in impact investing, that they've had at least 3 impact investing conferences in Rome, the Vatican Bank with Notre Dame Business School, the Mendoza Business School, and that the Pope is interested in using AI to solve poverty, and they're meeting up with Microsoft, and Ronald Cohen of Social Finance has been speaking, and Pierre Omidyar has been hosting dinners for their impact investing conferences. And actually a lot of these programs are being carried out, at least some of the pilots, through humanitarian aid. So in our city, Patrick Harker, who is the head of the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, is on the board of Catholic Relief Services. So there's this great overlap between the central banking systems and the ostensible humanitarian or charitable giving tied to social service and social welfare agencies. Catholic Relief Services is based in Baltimore, and I did a whole talk about Baltimore and the N.E. Casey Foundation and Johns Hopkins and Analytics in the human capital impact investing space. So I just want to say that we, a lot of what's going on, we know that faith-based institutions will be those fourth sector, the nonprofits or the charitable institutions doing the social impact investing. They'll be the ones administering the services, whether that's the Catholic Church, the Jewish faith, the Lutherans, the Unitarians, the LDS, whoever. Those institutions will be administering the services. And one of the things I tried to emphasize in my talks here was that essentially that will make them complicit in the impact market. So even if they're coming at things, the average rank and Joe person who's giving the services is doing it for the right reasons because there is great need, they will be turned into people carrying out this regime of data analytics and predictive profiling, and that's just going to be a part of it. And so what I'm trying to ask people of faith to do across all faith practices is to wake up to what's going on with impact investing, and to refuse and to confront their leaders about how the assets are invested and what their participation would be in impact markets. So, Pierre Omidyar was at the Vatican Impact Investing conferences. He's working on Good ID, sort of a universal digital ID for all people. He's very much involved in the educational technology space and other sorts of, medical compliance, and through his wife Pam, who did that Goal Mama app. So I'm really trying to get through to people, of a spiritual practice, because I think in many ways this engagement against AI is against something that's very much an anti-life system, and a predator energy, a demonic energy, if you want to call it that, and that we're all being pulled into this net. So I was actually aiming, after I walked out of the cathedral, I didn't see the Archdiocese here, and I was going to go to the United Way building. And so I looked, and it turns out that the United Way building is just 2 blocks from here. I was like, it's actually the crazy thing about today's weather. It's, early February in Utah, and there's snow in the mountains, but it's warm here. I don't even have a coat on. So the weather is weird. And, like I said, the skies are still all weird today. And from these, it started out clear, and then I could just see all of the various, planes flying over. You can just see the lines, and these are not normal clouds. So I guess I'm getting my daily dose of nanotechnology or whatever, nanoparticles. But part of the reason that I come out is to see how things lay on the land. And it's important to see, again, the power of these interlocking regimes. So you have the faith-based communities, of which in Utah, clearly LDS is a major entity in that space, both impact investing, policy, legislative. But then there's also the Catholic Church, which is not insubstantial. This church is from 1905, and that it's really just a stone's throw over to United Way. So anyway, this is just this, I just wanted to mention about, again, bringing back in the Catholic Church, impact investing, inclusive capitalism, AI, predictive profiling, and social welfare, and how it's all becoming interlocked as we have this economic dispossession in this nearly going on a year of lockdown and disruption. Okay, I think this is my last stop. So I made it to the United Way of Salt Lake City. So it's interesting to me because this building looks a lot like the one in the United Way in Philadelphia on the Ben Franklin Parkway. You can see they've got a couple of cells, like cell things on the top of their building too. This is in downtown Salt Lake City, and the reason I wanted to talk about this. Wait a minute, how do I get myself flipped around? Okay. Okay, so the United Way does something called collective impact, and that's impact investing in primarily education outcomes. And I'm just going to sit down. Sorry, the noise. It's all data driven, and their goal is to coordinate with community partners. And again, the United Way has access to a lot of influential leaders. So they say there are 175 organizations that are some of the most influential systems in the region. And they're working with 4 school districts in the greater Salt Lake area, which Granite, Davis, and Park City, and there may be one other one. They've worked with them at least for the past 5 or 6 years. Salt Lake City was the home of the first pre-K social impact bond. And as we know, if you look up metrics in the pre-K social impact bond in Salt Lake City, even in the New York Times and the Chronicle of Philanthropy, they've questioned the metrics on that social impact bond. That the number of children who were given pre-K who then were not receiving special education services, there was only 1 child out of the 100 that were in that program that ended up getting services. So, even people at the top were questioning those metrics. Goldman Sachs made money on that deal, but the question is, what was actually the benefit to the children that were in the program? I want to speak to this a little bit. The United Way works with Strive Together. Together, they advance something called collective impact. And the idea is to aggregate as much data as possible. They work with the community schools model. So there's the Coalition for Community Schools is one of the partners here. What the United Way does is it puts together the community partners, and then oftentimes it advances having parents sign waivers on the data. So the parents sign waivers either upon registration or after school programs or something, that their child's data be shared with various community partners. Now, some of those community partners are academic support, aftercare programs, but then there are also social welfare programs tied to housing and other services, food pantries, and there's well over 100 partners. So the data sharing is pretty big. And then even so, because Obama gutted FERPA, which is the student data privacy, student data collected in schools for the purposes of documenting impact, it's not well protected. It's not well protected at all. And I have grave concerns about that data, especially as they're pushing health services into schools and counseling and therapeutic services into school. Because not that I don't think that children need good health care and mental health support, but once it starts to happen in schools, especially through digital online platforms, those children are being put in a position of being profiled in a way that I think could ultimately harm some of those children in those programs, and all the while creating data that would serve these pay for success impact markets. So one of the programs that they're working on here is on beyond pre-K is chronic absenteeism. And this is important because, as you know, I was a parent in the Philadelphia public schools. And back in the day, we were part of a pilot program with Harvard, and Harvard was going to send out letters to all the parents. And it was they modeled it on these letters you might get with your utility bill, where they would say, this is your power usage and this is the usage of your neighbors, and to try to nudge you into better practice around your power usage. And so they were creating letters along these similar lines for absentee rates. But what happened was that even, and while I understand that there are some families that chronic absenteeism is an issue, and those families may need support to help stabilize their household so that the kids can regularly attend school. That is not the case for the vast majority of people. And many of these people were getting sort of warning notices when their child maybe had 5 or 6 absences, during the school year, which is crazy. And in fact, and it was because this was an impact metric for social impact investing. It wasn't really about quality education. It was about turning children into a metric that could be measured easily on scale and put on a dashboard as an investment opportunity. And the reason why this is particularly important is that one of the people who was harshest around absenteeism in California was Kamala Harris. And she was known for this. In fact, she was seeking out parents to put them in jail when if their child missed too much school. And one of these women was was incarcerated, and her child had been in the hospital. And her motivation in that was not that these children and the families get the support they need, but it was to be really playing hardball with people, because ultimately the data analytics for absenteeism are going to be part of these social impact bond deals. So, the United Way has a program in place called ALICE. It was developed out of the Northern New Jersey United Way. And, Northern New Jersey happens to be where a lot of the hedge fund folks live. So they live in Connecticut and they live in Northern New Jersey. And so it's not a surprise that this would come out of the Northern New Jersey United Way. The idea of, it's called ALICE, Assets Limited, Income Constrained Employed, ALICE, and it's the working poor. And so essentially the United Way has created a structural system of doing data analytics on low-income families to profile them as impact markets. And one of the people who was involved in the ALICE program, who was connected with Rutgers Newark and setting up the data analytics programs, there was a gathering in Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Federal Reserve and our former mayor, Michael Nutter, called Pathways to Prosperity. I believe it was in 2018, in January of 2018. And the woman who had been involved in the data analytics part with Rutgers Newark, an ally on the ALICE program, attended. And so it was really, I'm sure the people in the central banks knew, a year or two in advance that this reset was coming, that the reset was coming. And they knew that there would be a lot more ALICEs. They've run these national campaigns all over the country about ALICE. We care about ALICE. They set up games and you can role play being ALICE. And I'm not sure, they might even have a virtual reality headset. Like, you can empathize with Alice if you put on the VR headset. And so they have been marketing this ALICE program knowing that there were going to be millions upon millions more ALICEs coming online after this global economic reset. And so these families and these children who are caught up in public school systems, that many people who, and I'm not denying that there will be need, but it shouldn't happen that it's in public schools where the children's data is not protected, where the most influential individuals who stand to benefit from these impact markets are setting the rules, gutting the privacy protections, and then potentially putting families in a position of being accused of neglect or some such thing, like we're seeing with the Chromebooks, if people are not logging in regularly, and then that puts them in the crosshairs of child protective services. And this is all bound up in the United Way, and the United, many companies sort of compel their employees to give to the United Way, and we're conditioned to think that, the United Way cares about us, like they're good charitable citizens. But once you understand the social impact space, and once you understand the data surveillance, and once you understand that poverty is now going to be profitable for the people who can control the surveillance system and the data analytics system, it's really dark. And the people connected with our United Way are really a problem. I've gone in to confront them on it, and they kicked me out of their meetings. They won't let me in their building. And so, this is, probably an appropriate last visit for my trip, because a lot of it is running globally through United Way and Strive Together. And if you see collective impact is about social impact investing and data analytics. And it's all about aligning, scaling, automating, everything that is totally inhumane in terms of addressing people's real significant needs in the world. So Anyway, for those of you who are following along on my field trip visits to Salt Lake City, I am not your normal tourist for sure, but I'll just do one last, and of course, I'll just show over here, it's opposite a WeWork co-working space, right? There we go, for the gigs, right? Everybody's gonna be working on their gig jobs, and Instructure, and Evernim's gonna give you a digital identity, and Instructure's gonna put you on your badges, and the United Way and maybe the various faith charitable institutions are gonna, give your family some genetically aligned food for your, food system. And I forgot to say one last thing. When I went in the cathedral of the Magdalene, the Mary Magdalene Cathedral that was opposite the Catholic Relief Services, I almost stepped out, and I actually picked up, because I'm just a sucker for like interpretive displays, a little brochure that gave all of the sort of history of the art and the stained glass windows in there. And there was a Lady of Zion or something chapel, and I was like, oh, I have to see that. It was like this little side chapel, so I went in the chapel. It was this little oak paneled room with stained glass windows, and I sat down on the bench to read the description of what this chapel was, and it actually said that it was created relatively recently to celebrate Vatican II and the ecumenical nature of the Vatican connecting with the modern world. And they actually said that, and I'll show you a picture later, I'll put it in this video when I put it all together, but it was they're like, and this window has the symbol of the United Nations. So the chapel has the symbol of the United Nations in one of their stained glass windows, which is totally, at this point, I am not surprised, but it just feels totally crazy. So, here we're in the middle of, sort of the sphere of influence of, the LDS church, but then the Catholics got it going on too. So, I don't know. I still think that we are engaged in a spiritual moment. And it pays to be sort of connected to your spiritual practice and your creator and how you practice your faith. But I would be very skeptical of institutions at this point. If all institutions, unless you get their promise that they're not going into impact investing, you need to, be very wary. That's what I would say. So be well, everyone, and thanks for watching. Good morning, everybody. I'm heading to the airport, but I just wanted to have I had time to have a couple more stops along the way. I've got my Sage here this morning, and I'm in another bland office park. You can see this is the building. It's the Sorensen Communications Center, a business center, corporate offices, and this is really important because the Sorensen family, there's a father and a son. I'm sure there's more. Well, actually, there's more than that. But there's two Jim Sorensens. There was James Lavoy Sorensen and James Lee Sorensen. And James Lavoy Sorensen has passed. That was the father, and he was sort of a self-made businessman, and he was the father of a lot of companies. Here in Utah. He came from Idaho, and then he settled here in the Salt Lake region. And he, I think, had 60 different companies that were under the larger Sorensen family name. And he had a lot of medical patents. And it's interesting because it turns out one of these patents he had was on the disposable surgical mask. Right? So in this moment of the whole mask situation, I did not know that till I just revisited it in the car that James Lavoy Sorensen, that he has a patent on disposable surgical masks. So that's very interesting. But he was very much into biotech and genomics. And so now there's a Sorensen Genomics Institute that essentially is holding human DNA databases tied to, various medical uses. And then his son, James Lee Sorensen, so James Lavoy Sorensen, when he died, he was the richest. He had $4.5 billion, and he was the richest man in Utah. And ostensibly, according to Wikipedia, it said he gave all of his fortune to charity. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but so clearly there was a huge infusion of philanthropic money tied to business, and including medical and biomedical biotech efforts going in at that time. So his son, James Lee Sorensen, he was a pioneer in compression video software, I guess. So like compression files for video streaming. He also created a communications company that did video phones early on, like I guess in the 90s, video phones and closed captioning for the deaf, which is kind of interesting when you, like, the more I think about the sort of the human computer interfaces, these, supporting technological systems for people who, may have health conditions or other things that lead them to work in the world differently, that these systems are sort of dual use, right? And so that was some of his money was in the video compression, in the deaf communications, and in later on he founded a company called DataChem, which was environmental testing, and they were also into real estate. And in 2009, after the last housing crash, James Lee Sorensen purchased a portfolio of over $700 million worth of distressed commercial real estate assets from the FDIC. So currently now, Jim Sorensen, the son, is very much involved in impact investing. He endowed the Impact Center at the David Eckles Business School, which is at the University of Utah. He established the first student-run impact fund, venture capital fund, like sort of social impact venture capital fund at the university, and is very much integrated with sort of bootstrap impact investing, sort of data-driven philanthropy. And when I was at the launch of the Social Impact Partnerships Pay for Results Act, he was actually one of the opening keynote speakers at that event. So, he was in from Utah for that event down in the Dirksen Senate building. And as part of the University of Utah David Eckles Impact Center, they would have these summits the last several years. And I have the documents from 2018 where he and Ronald Cohen, who is the father of social impact bonds, came together and they gave the opening remarks for this event. So he's clearly, connected with the larger global social impact space. So I am just, I'll flip it around here. I know this is just really boring. I'm standing here on the city sidewalk because I'm not sure exactly what the deal is with this corporate space of going up closer, but this is the headquarters. Well, the headquarters of Waterford's Upstart is located in that building. There may be some other businesses in there. I think I saw something called Pill Pack, which I don't know, maybe prescription delivery pharmaceuticals, or so. I need to look up what Pill Pack is. But so Waterford Upstart is online preschool. And it's an online sort of kindergarten preparation program, but it's Chromebook based, it's digital education based. And, I find it really incredibly predatory. And on their website, one of the features they talk about a little girl, Charisse, who lives on the Navajo lands in southern Utah, and they're sort of saying like, oh, look, here's Charisse sitting on the floor of her living room doing her Chromebook education. Maybe she's 3 or 4 years old, maybe 4. She looks a little bit older, but here she is, like, she doesn't have running water and she doesn't have electricity in her house, but she has this Chromebook for preschool, and isn't this wonderful? And at the time I first encountered this a couple years ago, I just couldn't imagine what were people thinking. Online education is pretty terrible as it is, but why online education for preschoolers? Of all things, those are the children who should most be connected to the physical world and playing and engaging and using their senses and all of these things. And, it turns out that that program is being used in Philadelphia. And it's being used in Philadelphia in partnership with our library system. So again, our library system should be about children reading books and coming and sitting, in story hour together with the librarians or friends. But our library system is pushing Waterford Upstart on pre-K as quote unquote literacy preparation for kindergarten. And they were actually using it on refugee families. So again, they're targeting these vulnerable populations for these data mining enterprises. And, I would say, the thing about the Navajo reservation in Utah is that, they've been harmed exceedingly because of uranium mining, right? The whole population has been harmed not only from the mining, but from the cancerous fallout from that, from the dust, from the uranium mining. And, we've long talked about indigenous areas as these zones of sacrifice, sacrificial zones. It doesn't matter. We've pushed indigenous people onto, the worst of the worst land. And then when we find that there are resources that are wanted, then we extract them. and to hell with the people who are in that, we don't care about them. They can just be sacrificed. And I feel like, if you're picturing Cherise sitting in her living room with no running water and no electricity with a Chromebook, which I'm assuming gets maybe charged at a community center or somewhere off-site, I mean, it's really horrific. And it's not surprising because, again, it's this legacy of dispossession. But now, increasingly, look who's going to get online pre-K, right? Like it's going to be lots more people. And the reason that the pre-K has to be online is that they want the data. They want the data for the social impact bonds that the Sorensens are pushing to run their capital. And it really hurts my heart because one of the people who hosted me while I was here, who's a lovely, lovely person, and we're trying to figure out, like, how do we save education? How do we save a humane version of education for the future, because it's being erased, and even the incoming teachers aren't they grew up under standardized education. They don't know how to teach, and who's going to teach the teachers, and how do we keep this education alive? And she's actually she was Montessori trained but went on to train in Waldorf education, and so it's actually like her home is this beautiful small scale, they serve like kindergarten and early elementary, this Waldorf model. And what those children, they have a chalkboard and they have pastels and they have art activities. I think this week they're making Valentine boxes with pom-poms and glitter, and they have a nature corner with crystals and felt and tactile things and flashcards, and it's small and it's intimate, it's connected to people and each other, and it's beautiful. And that's what we should all be working for all of the children, not just children who can afford it, and then the poor kids get a Chromebook to be data mined as a commodity, just like a copper mine or this mining infrastructure. It's horrific. So and it's masquerading as philanthropy. That's the problem. It's masquerading as something that's good when it's actually it's the polar opposite. And so it's very hard talking about these things because, again, I'm not saying that the need isn't there. The need is totally there, but it's not, the needs are there, but the answers that they're going to provide for us, because the power is so out of imbalance and we are so becoming dehumanized, that it's not happening. So, I've got my little sage here. I'm going to put it down at the base of this tree again. As the mothers of the world do not consent to online preschool. We do not consent to data mining our children. We do not consent to human capital commodities or people nairs and portfolios of people as human capital in a global surveillance state. And we insist on our right to have right relationships among each other, as people, as community, as family, as human beings, and our relationship to nature. So I'm not going to go too close there because I don't know. This guy is super powerful, but I'm gonna set my sage down here with the tree and say with a little tobacco and just say a prayer of thanks for giving me the opportunity to come out and actually see these things that I've been writing about and understanding. And again, how do these things happen, right? It's where does evil live? Well, maybe evil just lives in a parking lot and it pretends that it's good. And I'm really calling on people of all sorts of faith and spirit to step out, right? Look up from your sandwich, step out and see this for what it is, and let us collectively refuse it, because I still do believe in my heart this isn't the future we want. So I might take just a quick walk down to the Sorensen Communications and I'll be back. All right, well, this is just going to be really quick. I walked down so you can see this is Waterford Upstart. It's right there. Walk across the parking lot, some reeds, and then this is the head of Sorensen Communications. You can see there on the top of the building. And again, it's just a parking lot. I've got my sage going. I've got not too much more left. I've saved one last little bit because I want to try to hit up the headquarters of Google Cloud, the new headquarters of Google Cloud, on my way to the airport. One last thing. But again, I guess I don't have too much more to say about Sorensen, but I think, it's hard because I spoke with some people on Friday night, the group that I was with, and it's a small town. I mean, it's a city, it's a large city, but it's also a small town and people know each other. And, I think for the most part, it's people's inclination to give others the benefit of the doubt, that they don't know what it is that they're doing, that they don't know what they're doing is wrong. And, So that's why I show up. I try to show up and say, are these the people? Is this who we are? I mean, I know it's what we have been. I'm not saying that in any way that the past history is in any way a good history and somehow we've just recently gone wrong. I think it's been wrong for a very long time. But to give people, to sort of show up and show a mirror to what this actually is, and to say that it's not right, and to take away the idea of plausible deniability, and that we all have a responsibility in taking a part. And it's not easy. It's not something that is easily done, but it has to be done, because ultimately what's coming next is going to be AI running the world as a planetary computer, right? I mean, that's what's coming. And, what I keep trying to say is I think across the spectrum of people's interests, if we actually come to grips with that we live in a world that could be abundant, like this valley, which here, I'll just show the view. It's an amazing, these mountains are incredible. Like, I got to go up in them yesterday, and, it's, so this corporatism is sort of nestled in these hills, and it's quite, that's why my background is in cultural landscape. So I like to actually come and see it. And it's this juxtaposition of, corporatism and natural beauty. And, we could have enough if we could redistribute like the resources. There's no reason that Jeff Bezos should have all the money and then give quote unquote Montessori pre-K to kids, or this Waterford Upstart for kids. It's just, we could collectively refuse, but it has to be done from a position of caring for all the children, not just like, I want to protect my kids or the kids in my school district or the kids in my city. It actually has to be a global program. We can't protect the kids here in the United States and let the kids in India be stuck on Bridges International online tablet computer systems either, because they're going to be set up to code the global digital jail, and that's as an impact commodity, and that's what's coming. So, again, I did not realize it until I came here, and I went to the University of Utah the day before yesterday, and we saw that this Merrill Engineering Lab, really what they were good at was video graphics and virtualization, this virtualization of a teapot. In the 70s, that they turned a sketch of a real looked at a real teapot, made a pencil sketch of it, and then converted the pencil sketch into a data to turn it into a virtual item. It's a virtual item. It's exactly what we're talking about in these video games of owning virtual items. And it's this virtualization that goes all the way back 50 years. And now we're like potentially going to be forced into this virtualized video game world of surveillance and predatory philanthropy, like straight up predatory philanthropy. And many people, because they don't have the understanding of both the history of the legacy of enslavement and indigenous genocide, and they don't know about these financial instruments. They don't understand how they're interfacing with AI and predictive analytics and sensor networks, that they just think that they're doing okay, that they're doing the right thing, and pat on the back and give, for handing over the cardboard check, and it's not going to be enough. So again, I'm just going to, here's my little offering, and just say, on behalf, again, on behalf of the mothers of the earth, of the grandmothers of the earth, of the parents, of the elders, of people who want to be human and not be avatars in a planetary computer. We're not going to give you our DNA. We're not going to be genomically sequenced for Utah's 1,000 life science companies to grow their bottom line on turning us into cyborgs with nanotech and, gene therapies on healthy people. We're not going to put our children on online programs so you can run your social impact bonds. And, we refuse. Any consent given or implied is hereby revoked. And we're, I'm just showing up today. These are powerful actors. I encourage people to look up Sorensen Genomics. I was in the Dirksen Senate building that day. I saw it's bipartisan, folks. It was, it was all Republican senators up there giving the speeches, and it was all Obama's policy people, the ones who were doing pay for success, Medicaid, tracking low-income pregnant women in South Carolina, and the same guy went up to Connecticut and he's monitoring, poor women who with, addiction, substance issues in Connecticut, and it's all for the hedge funds. It's all for the hedge funds. So, and you know what? I've been listening to Shoshana Zuboff most of the last couple days, and she does a really good job talking about Google and talking about the data and behavioral surplus and nudges, but you know, she never links. I mean, I'm not all the way to the end, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe she'll get there, but she's not talking about the hedge funds. Nobody's talking about that part, and that our government is handing us over to them. Both sides of the aisle. And you know, people who, and I'm not just putting this on Sorensen, LDS, whatever. You know, I was at the cathedral yesterday, and the Catholic Relief Services, all of these faith-based services, they're going to be running the social impact markets, whether they like it or not. And I have to believe in my heart, most people don't become preschool teachers so they can put kids on Chromebooks and look at them as data. You know, they become teachers because they have a calling, because they care for children and the next generation and life and beauty. And just like my friend who hosted me in her beautiful Waldorf preschool, you know, it has a cozy little stove, and you know, the teapots, they would have tea parties, right? Like little tea parties with real teacups and things, and you wouldn't have these stupid online virtual teacup items in virtual reality. And you know, I will just say, I'm in closing, you know, Heckman, who's behind this early childhood equation, you know, that's legitimizing all of the home visit programs and the pre-K programs and the literacy programs. You know, I watched a video that's part of this social emotional learning conference he hosted. It was his event that he brought in people from all over the country. Some were international, to talk about social emotional behavior. And my understanding is that the wife of the governor of Utah is really pushing social emotional learning, which is about, it's going to sound good, but it's about digital brainwashing these kids. And, you know, I've said it before, but there was a guy in the room and he couldn't get the parents to make the kids use an app. It was a pre-K app. And they kept saying, the parents for this study, they keep saying they're going to use it and then they don't. We can't make them use it. And so Heckman looked at the guy and he said, well, you're treating parents like they're some kind of like authority figure, that they know things. They don't. So really what you need to do is you need to gamify it. You need to gamify it for the parents, but with some, like a build a kid game. But you need a good incentive. You need a good incentive, like, well, maybe pornography. That's what he said. And then all the people in the room kind of like just stared at him, because he'd invited them, right? Like, he's the Nobel Prize winning economist. He's the esteemed guy in the oak paneled room. And they said, well, you know, like a good incentive, like, oh, just kidding. No, really just kidding. But I mean, a good incentive. And, you know, in the same conference, people were talking about the PBS Kids apps and the Daniel Tiger Tea Party game. And I think about like the virtual tea party and the Daniel Tiger Tea Party, you know, and it's PBS Kids and it's this takeoff of Mr. Rogers. And they're saying, well, you know, we're going to watch if you share your cookies right in the Daniel Tiger Tea Party game. And then if you don't, we're going to nudge you to share properly. And then if you still don't, like, we're going to know if you didn't share properly in the Daniel Tiger Tea Party game. And that's going to be an impact market, because the impact market is on behavior change and the Ocean 5 traits. And that's why the kids have to do online preschool. And that's why they have to be on surveillance play tables. Because they're building a world where they want people to be robots. I mean, they straight up said by 2050, they want people to like be relieved of having a physical mind and body in time and space. I mean, that's the Japan Moonshot Project. And they know this, and they're trying to condition, they're really trying to either break people who emotionally can't handle it, or reshape people's worldview and disconnect them from the natural world to make this happen, because the babies today will be the 30-year-olds in 2050. And they're making this reality happen. So I'm just going to give you one last view of these beautiful mountains here. You know, these are the old beings. These are the old beings that have been here for a very long time. And I tell you, these biotech and these human scientists, they have incredible hubris to want to play God in this world. So thanks for listening. I'm going to try to maybe hit up the Google Cloud place on my last stop. Be well. Okay, I'm back in downtown Salt Lake City. When I was looking up the Bluffdale NSA data center, like I happened to put in the Google Maps, you know, and data center, and like, you know, it really impacted me to see just laid on the land in this valley how many data centers there are. There's a Facebook data center, but it was actually like half an hour out of the way this morning, so I didn't go. But there was also a notification that early in February 2020, that Google opened a new cloud center here in Salt Lake City. And so this is the I don't know that you can trust Google to tell you exactly where it is. It says that this data center has already opened, and it says that the center is, or the headquarters is at South 200th Street and West Temple, which is this intersection, but clearly this building is under construction. So I don't know if it sent me to the right place or not. I could not seem to find the any other notification of a data center. But it's interesting in its proximity because it's downtown Salt Lake City, and then this area right here, it doesn't really look like it, but it's actually the entrance to like a very upscale mall. And the woman who was hosting me when we were driving around, you know, there's like Nordstrom, it's very high end, like very fancy things. And that, you know, the way this system works is that, you know, these communities, the faith-based communities that have these large endowments, like the Church of Latter-day Saints, they have a huge amount of money to invest, and they put it places. So one of the investments they made was this mall. And again, it's not a mall for regular people, it's a mall for people who have a lot of resources. So, you know, it's interesting to have this sort of consumer culture juxtaposed against the cloud computing, and I'm thinking of you, Varun, in terms of like global supply chains and consumerism and materialism, and then what that looks like in relation to a cloud-based world. Because this is, you know, the Google place that was opening up, it was cloud systems, and they said that this was, I think Google has 22 cloud regions, and there's 6 in the US, and there's 3 in the Western United States. This was going to be their 3rd in the Western United States. And it's important to consider that in this deal for coming to Salt Lake City, part of it was because of the access. Well, one of the reasons they ended up in Salt Lake City was they partnered with PayPal. And PayPal is Peter Thiel's company, as we know, so that's digital payments. And, you know, now we're imagining sort of digital payments along with digital virtual items and virtual reality, and the control systems that go with controlling currency and creating, you know, alternative currencies, maybe behavioral currencies and blockchain tied to credit scoring. And, you know, the more I've been thinking about these systems and the blockchain identity and the smart cities, because we're actually just about a block away from their arena, which is sponsored by Vivint, and Vivint is smart homes. So that you've got like their sports arena is sponsored by the smart home technology. Is that increasingly our lives, and I mentioned this in several of my talks, are going to be governed by these digital contracts, these digital smart contracts tied to our identity, tied to physical sensors embedded in the place. Like, you know, I can foresee a future where, you know, do I have the token to be able to open the door to go in that mall? Like, is my credit score sufficient to get in that mall? And it reminds me, there was an old movie, I can't remember which one it was, with Steve Martin, or maybe it was it was a Steve Martin movie, but, you know, he was going to have a date at a very fancy restaurant, and they had to like credit score him, and I think he was a doctor, and they were like, oh, you know, no, it wasn't a doctor, but it was sort of like, well, you can have the chicken, you can come to this restaurant, but all you can have is the chicken, because based on your credit scoring, that's all you can afford. And I keep like projecting this forward into this digital virtual world governed by invisible contracts with rules that may or may not be understood to us, where the cloud world and the real world intersect. And in some ways, like, that's this very interesting intersection of, you know, this high-end mall and Google, and the fact that in this community, which where the, you know, LDS Church has quite a bit of influence, political influence, financial influence, you know, where are we living? Are we living in the cloud? Are we living with the real world? If there is injustice in the cloud, to whom do you appeal? Do you appeal to Google? Do you appeal to Peter Thiel and PayPal and Palantir, the all-seeing eye? So I guess that's mostly just what I wanted to say today, but like the importance of the physicality of the data centers. Clearly this doesn't look like their data center. It looks like it could be their corporate headquarters for the infrastructure for the data center. But it's also interesting that I can't quite figure it out. According to, you know, none of the press releases gave the address other than to say it was in Salt Lake City. And then this is what's on Google Maps, but who knows where Google Maps is actually sending me. So, you know, I might just, you know, have about an hour on the meter, so I might just walk around a tiny bit more. But, you know, I've got, you know, here's I got my little sage token again, and I'm just going to say, Google, we don't want to live in your cloud world. We don't want to be governed by your blockchain smart contract systems. We don't want to be predictably profiled. And I guess ultimately I think we need to turn our backs on this like culture of luxury. Those people who have this luxury consumer demand system in exchange for something that is much more relationships and sharing of the gifts of the earth, so that everyone's needs are met in this world coming forward. So again, I'll have a little bit of a workaround since I did put an hour on the meter. Okay, I'm walking down towards the temple, and I want to make one correction. I thought the person had pointed this out, had said that this was the shopping mall, and it turns out I think the shopping mall is like a block down. There you can see the Nordstrom, and there's a high-rise building in the background. And they said that it's like $1 million apartments or I guess condominiums that you would purchase, and that was also an investment of the church here. So again, sort of understanding how like tithings are used and where the money is put. This is actually the place that I was backed up to, is the convention center, and I'm going to show you this because it's interesting. There's an art installation here with sort of the various opposites in front of this convention center. And I think it actually really speaks to this idea of, some of the binary maybe. And so I'm just going to walk by and so you guys can see, some of the elements of this piece, because I think it's interesting to imagine this world where everything is divided into one or the other. And there's some that sort of speak to me. Just because you can do something, does that mean you should do something? We've got break and fix. And again, we know that this predatory philanthropy breaks things on purpose so they can fix things to create their markets. We have express and suppress. So we're sort of dealing with that now in our current moment of freedom of expression or repression over that. Stand or run. Do you stand? Do you leave? There's ego and id up there. It's kind of tucked behind. Stick and carrot. Those are the nudges. Clearly, we've got the nudge built in there. I don't know. There's two wrongs and right. So that's intriguing to me. What they were thinking about the two wrongs and the right. And then they've got tiger and lamb, but the tiger is spelled with a Y. So I don't know if that's. We've got the bee and lion. So we've got, the bee, the beehive state. Speak in silence. Is this a moment where people are going to speak up? Or are they going to stay silent as they see things that may not be right? Let's see. Some of the other ones. I guess loved and lost. Again, stay or go. What is our position? Are we sticking with this? Are we trying to walk away from it? And then, this is one that I've used a lot, is the sacred and profane. As we're dealing with the technological takeover of society, that is this balance of natural energy and artificial intelligence energy, and I feel that the natural is the sacred relationship and the profane is the artificial construct. So the exception and the rule, again, we're currently living in a state of exception. It seems like all the rules don't apply so that the rich can get what they want. There's different things. I think lead and follow, and finding your place in this. Are you leading? Are you following? Who are you following? And then, prevent and cure. Well, that's interesting because I think in some ways the prevention part is going to be these impact markets. But the cure is also going to be probably led to more contrived biomedical interventions. And do they actually lead to a cure? And then believe and doubt. And what are we putting our belief in? What is our appetite for doubt? What do we do with the doubt? And trust is a big word that's been out there. It's sort of a spell word. The idea of trust being put on blockchain, that we've lost trust in systems. People are breaking, the society is breaking down. We're losing trust in one another. And how do we regain trust? And is it a mechanical trust, or is it based on authentic relationship? So again, I just wanted to make that correction, that this seems to not be the mall, but instead the convention center area. But the mall is in this block. And again, it's sort of paired with this high-rise, this luxury high-rise residence, both of which were investments of the church. And I will say this high-rise actually looks very similar to one that was constructed in Philadelphia. There was a large parcel that was redeveloped off the Parkway by the Church of Latter-day Saints. There's a new temple there within the past 3 or 4 years. And there was a smaller building built, and then another tower, which actually uses very similar stone to the one that we have in Philadelphia. So I'm just going to keep walking on down to the temple next. All right, so this is my last stop. I am here in Temple Square. The temple is under renovation, construction work. My understanding is it's been told that it's being fixed for earthquake proofing, that sort of thing. And I'm just standing here. I'm standing here next to the statue of the pushcart family, and it says that people who, I guess, came from Iowa and who couldn't have a wagon, and that they walked. And I notice here this whole weekend really has been a focus on children, and so I'm looking at the mother, and then there's a young child in the cart, and then there's an older child in the back of the cart. And I think that's really the focus these days, is what's going to happen with the children. What's going to happen with the children when they put them on, wrapped in wearable technology, and do projects for competency badges and good behavior, and who in the world gets to decide what the good behavior is in the world that they're building. And I did sort of say a prayer that, to the Creator, that we can come together around that, people from all faiths, from all different cultural backgrounds, and stand in that, and understand that where we are now is built on a legacy of dispossession, that none of us sort of, we're here, we're born in this time, and it's built on a long history, and the history is about, a lot of wealth and power accrued from harming families, right? From harming certain people's families. And on that history of slavery and indigenous erasure, really. And I was coming out of the corner here, and the light posts actually have an indigenous profile and a headdress, right? And so I do think that in this moment, it is this opportunity to have like a reckoning with that past, right? And who, not in just a performative way, not in a let's have equity on a dashboard, but really if we're going to step into right relationship in this moment of, this feels like the big test, right? Feels like really the big test for all of us, is where are we going to stand? And I think that we should be able to stand for all the children and all of the future generations and all the other beings. So, just in looking at the pushcart folks, and actually, I know a couple people who have this heritage, and the profile is very similar for the two people that I know, and both of whom are trying to, we're all kind of trying to come to grips with that, and what is our responsibility to, in this current time, do the right thing. So anyway, I guess I'm gonna just head on to the airport. I've had a lot of visits here. I saw a lot of things. The people here have been incredibly generous and loving, and I've had people saying good intentions for me, that this message hits the mark, that the message that I have is accessible, and that people, even though I'm kind of like a fire hose on this stuff, and it's not easy. It's not an easy language to learn, the language of biocapitalism and impact investing, and it's not easy to separate out the false language and the word spells. And there's a loud truck here. None of that is easy, But here, I'll just show you. This is, so this is, this is the history, right? So this is the right outside the wall, the temple square. So the past isn't really past. It's still really right here. Just think of Charisse and on the floor with no water and a Chromebook, and what do we do about that? How do we stay where we are and try to disentangle from these larger systems? And I'm crossing the street. Don't want to get hit by a car on the way to the airport. Anyway, this is work, right? We look up from the sandwiches, we look around, we look at the corporate centers and we see them for what they are, and they might be somebody's 6-figure salary or 5-figure salary, but I think in some ways they're stealing our souls. And as Google sort of starts to replace government, and again, I'm not a nationalist, but this idea that our autonomy, that we should have agency in our lives and we should have agency in our communities and what happens, and this isn't something that should be defined by data analytics and predictive profiling and nudges, whether we know them or not. It's all part of this conversation, and it's very much a part of Salt Lake City. So again, I guess I will sign off until I'm back on the East Coast. But, I just want to say thank you so much to Carolina and Big Ocean Women and my friend who extended the invitation after just listening to my conversation with Sarah G and looking up blockchain and then diving in, because that's what it's going to take. People who aren't afraid to look, and that we need each other, and that we'll find, I think if we work from a heart space and we try to do our best to be good human beings and do the work, that we'll find each other, and we are finding each other, and I'm grateful for that. That's been a tremendous gift. So I love you all, and signing off from Salt Lake City.